My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today, what I'm going to be doing is giving you the 30,000-foot view update for what's going on across the entire state in all the big markets in the entire Alaska state. So we're going to be looking at Anchorage, we're going to be looking at the MatSu Valley, we're going to be looking at Fairbanks, and we're going to be looking at the Kenai Peninsula. And we'll be looking just at the residential market. Unfortunately, it's too long of a video if we try to break down the condos and the multifamily. So just looking at the residential for these markets. Before we get started though, do make sure you give this video a like. If you haven't done so already, do subscribe. And without further ado, let's go and jump into today's market update for the entire state. Now, the first market we're going to look at is Anchorage. So for Anchorage on the residential side, we see that the number of properties that are available has almost been cut in half, because it was about 297 properties that were available this time last year. Now it's 165. So you see almost a 50% cut, which really pales in comparison when you look at how much of a cut that is from the previous years. Because usually around this time of year, 3-4 years ago, we saw that there would be about 500, 600 homes that were available on the market. So we are seeing we're cut down to about 20 to 25% where we usually are. So that's number one. Inventory is really low. Next, the number of properties that have actually sold in Anchorage has increased very slightly from about 181 that pinned in and sold this time last year, and now it's 188. So very, very small increase from the number of properties that sold in this market in Anchorage during the time period. Now, the next thing that I really want to draw your attention to is the average sold price has increased by about 3.6% for the entire Anchorage market, going from about $424,000 to $440,000. So this is significant because we are seeing an increase, obviously, but not as much of an increase as we saw for the previous year here. So that's significant. Now looking at the MatSu Valley, we see that the number of properties that are on the market has decreased over here as well, from about 260 to 219 for the month of January. So yeah, again, diminishing inventory, especially when you compare it to the years before. Now, what we see as far as the number of properties that have actually sold, it went from about 127 this time last year to 122 for this previous year. So yes, we are seeing a decrease in the number of properties that have sold. Not a whole lot in the MatSu Valley though. Now, looking at the average sold price, we see that the average sold price went from about $348,000 to $363,000, which is roughly about a 3 or 4% increase for the average sold price in the MatSu Valley, which is really nothing when you compare it to about the 15% increase that we saw year to date this time last year. Yeah, that's a big takeaway. We'll break down why that's important in the summary though. Let's take a break here real quick. For those of you who are considering making a move up here, I do have a relocation guide. And for those who are considering selling your home and moving somewhere else, I've got a guide for you as well. So if you'd like either one of those guides, do make sure you reach out to me on my website down below. I'd be more than happy to send a guide to either one of you. For what you need, just make sure you put in the little comment section what it is that you need me to send you. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the update and see what's going on in Fairbanks. Now, what we see in Fairbanks is the number of properties that are available went from 47 properties to 28. So we're seeing a huge compression of the market in Fairbanks, especially when you look at the last 3 or 4 years leading up to it. So yes, inventory is down in Fairbanks as well. Next, what we see for Fairbanks is that the number of properties that have actually sold went from 22 the year before, and now it's down to 16 for this year. So yes, we're starting to see a cut in the number of properties that have actually sold, just because the inventory gets so compressed to where you can't keep selling more properties than you did the year before if the inventory gets past a certain threshold where it can't maintain that. So yes, inventory is down, number of sold properties is starting to go down as well. Now, the average sold price for properties that are in Fairbanks is actually decreased by roughly 1.3%, because it went from about $286,000 to about $282,000. So that's something we're probably going to start seeing in some different markets here moving forward, because you get to a point where the market gets so small and compressed to where just everybody quits looking for homes, and that in fact is going to start kind of bringing some of the average sold prices down from where it was before. So I'm keeping a close eye on Fairbanks, just because I suspect they're probably going to be the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the markets here. But let's go and take a look and see what's going on in Kenai. Now in Kenai, the story is going to be pretty similar to what we saw in the other markets. Inventory is definitely way down. I think it was about 287,000. Now it's about 140 something for this past year for properties that are available there. Again, that's going to be down by about 20-25% from what we saw a couple of years ago. So inventory across the entire board in the Kenai is way down. That's your takeaway. Now, the number of properties that have sold in the Kenai Peninsula has actually increased very slightly from the year before, because it was about 57 that closed this time last year. Now it's 62. So you're seeing a slight bump up in the number of properties that have actually closed in the Kenai Peninsula during that time period. Now, looking at the average sold price for the Kenai Peninsula, what we see is that it went from about 310,000 year to date the year before to about 316,000, which means we've seen actually a 1.7% increase for the average sold price. So we're starting to see that average sold prices are starting to slow down really across the board. And this is going to be your summary here. Across the board, inventory is down. Now we're starting to get to the point to where you can't keep having the inventory get so compressed down and have the number of sold properties just increase year over date just forever. That's not going to happen. Eventually, we're going to get to the point in all the markets where the inventory is so compressed to where the number of sold properties just crashes down because everybody stops looking for properties because it's too competitive. So once that starts happening, you start seeing softening up of prices. And that's why I'm keeping such a close eye on Fairbanks, because I suspect they might be kind of a micro study in what could happen in other markets, just because the inventory is just so compressed over there, and that does bad things. Buyers stop looking for stuff, and that makes it so there's less demand, and makes it so a lot of those situations that have helped sellers a lot goes away, and makes it conversely bad for buyers, because those sellers who would have put their house on the market because it was a strong market, now they're like, well, I don't want to do that now because there's not as many buyers. So if you are a seller, it's a good time to be looking at selling. We don't know how much longer this is going to last. I suspect probably for about another year or so. It's going to really depend what happens in the inventory, though, and the interest rates. Now, if you're a buyer, those interest rates are very important, because you can handle these higher prices just because the interest rates are so much lower. I mean, do the math, and you'll see, even if, let's say hypothetically, if the market bottom did fall out of the market, you can get a property for $30,000, $40,000 less than what you can now. And if you're paying at a higher interest rate, it's going to be about the same, or you're going to be paying more than if you paid at the current rate and at a lower interest rate. So I sure hope this has been useful for you. If it has, then do make sure you give this video a like, give me a comment down below. Let me know what you would like to know more about.